welcome to the Heartful Parent Podcast. I'm your host, Christy Keating. In this podcast, we talk about it all, our parenting, our partnering, and our professional lives, because they are all a part of us, and we were never meant to do this alone. Welcome back to the Heartful Parent Podcast, everyone. I am so grateful to have you here, whether it's your first time or your 37th time. I think this is our 37th episode. Either way, I am thrilled that you are joining me. I'm really excited today to introduce you to a woman whose career path has, in many ways, been similar to my own. As you know, if you've listened to this for any period of time, I spent nearly 20 years practicing law as a criminal attorney, and then sort of took all of those skills and my new certification, and 5.5 years ago opened the Heartful Parent Collective as a parent coach and educator. Well, my guest today, Wendy Meadows, had a similar journey where she practiced law for many years as a family law attorney, and then took all of those skills and a new certification and transferred that into working as a life coach. She is also the best-selling published author of a new book called Sparkle and Grit, Live a Technicolor Life by Finally Finding Balance, Escaping Monotony, and Beating Burnout. And that's what Wendy and I are talking about today, is sort of her journey and this fantastic book that she just put out that I got to tell you, I really enjoyed. Wendy has been named one of the top 100 lawyers in Maryland and has over 20 years of combined experience in litigating, mediating, coaching, and consulting. And with that experience, she offers highly relatable and spot-on insight, and I think you'll hear that in this interview. Wendy spends her days now coaching clients, consulting for small firms, speaking at events, and she still does mediating for family law disputes. In her free time, she enjoys playing in the water with her family and dreaming up her next travel extravaganza. As you'll see from my interview with Wendy, this book that she wrote has a lot of practical advice, a lot of life, just like relatable life experience for those of you who are busy parents, which I know if you're a parent, the word busy goes hand in hand with that. So without further ado, let me introduce Wendy Meadows, and I hope you enjoy this conversation. Wendy, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to have you on the Heartful Parent Podcast.
I'm so excited to be here.
You and I were just talking a little bit before I hit record on this, and have a copy of your new book, which we're going to obviously talk about, which is so fabulous. But I'd love to start with talking a little bit about your journey, because you and I both have a legal background. I know you were in a law firm and then had a solo practice. I was in criminal law, and we both sort of said, I want to do something else or something different. Can you talk to us a little bit about that journey? And the reason I'm asking, just so listeners know, is I realize not everyone who's listening is a lawyer, but there are lots of us who've gone through these transitions or are deciding to make a transition, and whether it's the right time or the right decision. And I'd love to kind of hear about how that transition happened for you.
So I'd say if I'm looking at years, 2016 to 2018 is when a lot of the magic happened. So if we were around back then to see what was going on, and if you read my book, you'll see I was pretty miserable in 2015. Like that's sort of, for me, nothing was like I thought it was supposed to be. Like I finally had my house and my kids, and I was partner in a law firm and all these things. And I just felt bleh. I'm like, why did I work so hard to get here? It's not how I thought it would feel like. And I was feeling pretty down. And by accident, I fell into this health and wellness company. And that was end of 2015, beginning of 2016. And then the rest of everything else just started to seem sparkly and a little bit more happy. I'm like, oh, there's a life outside of being a lawyer. And all these people who are not practicing law seem to have a lot more happiness in their lives. They're not as miserable as I felt. So like, So I was seeing this and I was like, well, this is interesting. So then again, a lot of things sort of happened by accident. I say accident. I don't really think it was accident. It was some sort of divine intervention, but I started coaching. I started coaching health and wellness clients, mostly lawyer moms, mostly just moms all over the country. And I found myself by the wee hours of the morning, between like 5 and 6, 5 and 7, before my kids got up, I was just like plugging into women and I was just lifting them up and I was helping them. And then they were share their very vulnerable stories with me, which I was used to in the family law world because I was a family law attorney for a long time. I've heard all these vulnerable stories. But instead of me trying to fix it within the confines of the law, an opposing counsel and a judge, it was just helping the woman work on herself. And I noticed as my language and my coaching language really formed during these years, now we're, between 2016 and 2018, and I was building women up every morning, that same like morning mindset I took to my clients, my law clients. And I started treating them in a different way and talking to them in a different way. And I found a lot more happiness in terms of how I was holding myself out as an attorney and how I was acting as an attorney. So number one, like my clients were getting better results and they were feeling happier with the process overall. But I was also seeing like the law isn't a place for me to be long-term in terms of being a family law litigator. So I firmly do not believe that family law litigation saves families. I think it can really devastate families. Now, there's some cases that need to go to litigation. There is no other way, but I didn't want to be a part of that anymore. And I knew I had better skill sets.
Yeah.
This is becoming a very long story.
It's great. And I'm relating to so many pieces of it, even though I was not a family law litigator. I was a criminal litigator. And there's times when that's really needed. And also that can destroy people.
Right. So what happened then? In 2018, for a host of reasons, I left my firm and I really needed that time to figure out, am I supposed to be a family law litigator? Is that what I'm supposed to do? This mediation thing that I had started, I was like in my baby stages of being a mediator. I think I like this better. And I know there's something else out there for me. And I don't know what that is, but I knew I needed to figure that out on my time. So one, it was mine. I didn't have to share it. And number two, so I wasn't hurting my law partners because I was partners, right? And I did have billables. And I knew if I was going to take time away from the firm, like I didn't want that to hurt my partners either.
Right.
So all these things sort of started coming together. And in February 2020, right before COVID, I had probably the most billable hours I've ever had, the most profitable month I ever had. I had 3 trials and it was a nightmare. And I was never so miserable and burnt out. And I'm like, no more. Like I don't want to be a family law litigator by myself either. Like what else is out there for me? And then we had COVID and all that nonsense.
Right.
I hired my first coach December of 2020. And basically very beginning of 21, she says to me, she's like, Wendy, whenever I think of you, I just think of you as coach. Like I think of you as a coach. I'm like, yeah, I'm like this Beachbody coach. I'm doing this health and wellness thing. She's like, no, like a coach on your own terms and your own ways, like for other like women out there, primarily like lawyer moms for the most part. I'm like, that's like my secret thought that I always want, but I didn't know if that would be for me or if I would be good enough. She's like, of course you'd be good enough. So accidentally falling into the health and wellness business, seeing how that changed my outlook on life and how the language I used with clients could make things so much better. And then having the outside validation of my own coach be like, Wendy, this is what I see for you. Those things got me to where I am now in terms of like, I still have a lawyer hat on in terms of mediation. And I still represent children because representing kids is the whole reason why I went to law school. So I'm keeping that, but the life coaching and then the book is my most recent endeavor.
Yeah. I love that journey because I sometimes feel like I fell into this accidentally as well. I knew I wanted something different. I really struggled after the birth of my first daughter and with balance, which I know you talk about in the book. And, is this really what I spent all these years working towards, right? I was pretty miserable and stumbled on this website about parent coaching that I went back to, I don't know, 100 times over the course of 5 years before I was like, okay, I'm actually going to do this. Yeah, it took a while. And then I did it. And then it still took a while to say, I'm going to leave the law, even though I'm still paying my law loans. Right. I mean, that was a hard decision. I think because I found joy in what I'm doing, I paid off those loans faster than I would have if I'd stayed where I was, which is there's sort of some sweet irony in that. But at any rate, so you are now working with women. I know you work with women all over the country from all walks of life, although primarily other lawyer moms. And then you wrote this book that just came out a few weeks ago, a month ago now.
September 20th. So it hasn't even been a whole month yet. It's crazy.
Yeah. Okay. And I have it and I love it. And I was telling you this story before we hit record. For those listening who, probably don't have a copy of the book yet, although you need one, Wendy does this really amazing thing where at the beginning of every chapter, she's made a playlist that goes with the book. So she tells you a song that kind of resonated with her or that she thought about as she was writing it. And so I was reading the chapter on parenting and listening to Good Job by Alicia Keys. And I found myself sitting there in tears, with the words of the song and the words in the book and everything sort of jiving and the acknowledgement that this job of parenting is so hard. So I'd love to kind of hear, how did this book come about? Because it's not a parenting book, right? It's not a how to be a parent. There's some great self-reflection that you invite parents to do, but it's not a parenting book. It is meant to empower women. So tell us more about how this book came about.
So ever since I was a little girl, I knew I wanted to be a writer. I just thought at the time it was going to be a fiction writer. And every time I tried my hand at fiction, it was just not good. It was like not good. But I really, really enjoyed writing, especially when I wrote nonfiction back in college. I took this reading and writing nonfiction and kind of fell in love with it and realized, okay, I have a voice. But then I put it on the bookshelf. I put it on like that lovely bookshelf you have behind you. And I put it on the bookshelf. And I went to law school, did all the things. And then as I fell into the health and wellness business, I started a website. So I started blogs, just to get myself like recognized and out there. And I found that the more I shared in my blogs or other social media posts on like Facebook, Instagram, even LinkedIn, was the more vulnerable I could be, the better. In terms of when I was vulnerable about something that maybe even I had felt shame on at one point. Like, and if I put it out there, then that means another woman has read it and said to themselves, oh my gosh, me too. I'm not alone. And then I usually have some sort of takeaway or some sort of, okay, and next step and what you should do. And I could coach people I've never even met, like from afar, or make them feel better from afar. Like, for example, I had a hysterectomy like a year or two ago. I still get random like messages in my Facebook or wherever saying, oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing this. I have such a better idea of what to expect now.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Every time I share something vulnerable, I could help somebody else. Don't even know who they are, but that makes me feel like I'm doing what I was meant to do on this planet. Mm-hmm. But the other neat thing about sharing your vulnerability is that then you get to own it. Like you own it, you own the story. And then if you're ever worried about people talking about you for some reason or for some like thing that you don't like about yourself and it's out there, well, if you grab it and talk about it in the way that is empowering, then you have then overcome that feeling that you don't like so much about yourself.
Yeah. Taking control of it.
Yeah. So doing that again and again, and I'm like, okay, I really want a book though. I still want a book. I've always had that idea in my head. A lot of interesting things happened again by happenstance to get this book here. And what I talk about in the book is called Sparkle and Grit, is like really being mindful of those little sparkles put on your path designed to wake you up. Yeah. Because a lot of us, like, we are so exhausted from parenting and working and all the things, and we don't have that really exciting thing that's just for us. And what I tell people usually around the time your second child is, or your last child is 18 months, your brain starts to like wake up again, and you need to start like looking for those sparkles on your path. So my sparkle here was, I had put on a podcast. It had the word legal in it. I don't even remember what the podcast was called, but I put on a podcast and the woman said, I am hosting this amazing summit. You all need to come. It's called Dream Bigger. It's this date in Arizona. And I, for no good reason, I'm like, I'm going, except for it sounded cool. Like, I'm like, husband, I'm going to Arizona. And he's like, okay. I'm like, I don't know why, I'm just going. So I went to the conference, and sure enough, there was a gentleman there named Jake Telfer. He's a book coach. He's like, I'm going to teach you how to write your best-selling book in 30 days. I'm like, this sounds amazing. So I was really most excited for his piece of the program. And a couple months later, I went to his conference, and then a couple months later wrote a book, and like, here it is. So basically just my point is like listening to my gut. Something told me to go to that conference.
Yeah.
I was super excited to meet Jake. My gut, like I met him. I'm like, yep, we have great synergy. I need to work with him. And I just need to keep following my gut and everything that feels good in terms of getting the book out into existence. Coaching isn't cheap, as
Right.
I'm sure you're aware. And I wanted a way for all women to be able to benefit from my coaching in a way that they still got the benefits of what I teach and what I talk women through and the exercises I do with my clients. So I feel like this is a very easy, low ticket way for people to still get the benefit of coaching with me. People say that when they read the book, it's just like I'm talking to them. So it feels the same. And then the homework is a lot, where I call it grit work. The grit work is similar exercises I'd have clients do. And I wanted a way for it just to life coaching to be more accessible to people as opposed to having to do a whole big package. They could say, okay, I'm just going to do the book. And if I do these exercises, they've essentially life coached themselves. So that was my reason behind this book in particular, what I wanted it to do for other women.
Well, and I have to say, you succeeded in spades. First of all, it's written in it felt like you were talking to me, and it was a very readable, let's be honest, we all know those nonfiction books out there that were like, oh my God, how many more pages of this do I have to read before I get to the point or whatever, right? There are some of them on the shelf behind me. And this one, even just in the introduction, as you're describing sort of the chaos that many of us who are working parents feel, and the sort of this and that, we're just running from one thing to the next and sort of going to bed exhausted and waking up exhausted. And there was something about the way that you wrote it and the pacing with which I was reading it, because I felt myself almost reading faster and faster and faster as I felt the chaos of the day, like as you were describing it, kind of pick up. But it just made it really relatable and really readable. And I know that some of the grit work that you suggested are similar exercises to what I have clients do. So it just resonated with me in such a great way. It's that, hey, we got to look at ourselves first. So when you think about parents in particular, since this is the Heartful Parent Podcast and the folks that I work with are all parents in some form or fashion, as you sat down to write the book, I know you said that you wanted people to be able to get the benefits of coaching and sort of life coach themselves. But as you think about parents, what do you most hope that they'll walk away from with your book?
Yeah, that's a good question. Number one, that they're not alone, that all of that junk and nonsense, and they feel like they look at Instagram and Facebook and they see all these other like families living their perfect family life, and everyone must have it so much easier than they do. All these families have these other unicorn family that they do all their vacations with, and like their husband have great date nights, and the kids go to bed when they're supposed to get to bed, and their house is beautiful and organized. So there's this perception out there that all these other families have it so much better. And I think you and I probably both know from meeting with countless parents. I was a divorce attorney for 18 years. Like I know what's actually going on behind the scenes is nobody has it perfect. Everybody is struggling. So number one, to feel heard and not alone. Like I'm really, really lucky. I have good friends that I get to talk about this stuff with on the daily. So we all know we're not alone. And it's like the really hard stuff. And it's the stuff that we can't even always talk about publicly, because then we're like throwing our kids under the bus. Right. Or we're throwing our spouse under the bus. I think that's the hardest part, is like there's stuff I would love to share with everybody, but then I'm throwing other people under the bus that aren't me. And that's just not okay.
Right.
But I think the way I say it in the book, a parent's perception on what's going on around them and how difficult it is, feeling heard first, but then also realizing that there is a way out. And if parents can say, okay, where can I really make sure I have been present with my kid today? And no, it doesn't have to be all day. It doesn't mean you have to be stay at home.
Yep.
It doesn't mean you have to bake the perfect cake. Like I think I say as an example in the book, it might just simply be that you made sure that you kissed your child on the head in the morning before you left for a very busy day at work, and you kiss them on the head again, like as they're tucked into their bed, but you were fully present in that moment and aware. Mm-hmm. I think that, and like really having parents grasp the fact that that time with their kids, to enjoy it when it's enjoyable, and to like take note of it as opposed to letting it pass them by so quickly. Those would be my two takeaways for parents in particular.
I love those takeaways, and that idea that I mean, I think what you do in it, just in the way that you described it now and in the book, is make it okay to not be the Instagram perfect family, right? And I totally relate. It's especially as a parent coach, there are times when I can't always talk about things because I do need to protect the privacy of other people and, not throw them under the bus. And whether that's professionally or with my girlfriends, it sometimes feels like a really lonely place to be. Parenting can feel very lonely. I'm curious about your own parenting journey, if you're willing to share just a little bit about, sort of what's been hard, what's been amazing. Like, you talk about sparkle, right? Finding the sparkle and those moments of being present. Where's the sparkle been and where has it been a little rusty?
So many good little pieces of sparkle, and it kind of helps. The sparkle helps like keep all the rest of like the hard at bay a little bit, or at least, in perspective. But I'll say sparkle is, my kids are 9 and 11. My son is 11, about to be 12. My daughter's 9, about to be 10. And seeing them come into their own and seeing what they have learned from me and how they go out in the world and how they manifest that is really cool. When people say, oh, are your kids more like you or your husband? I say, well, it's really funny. Each of my kids is exactly like me, but very different parts of me. And I was saying this to my husband the other day. He's like, that is true. I'm like, I know. I'm like, don't worry. Someday they might be like you. They just have very different parts of my personality and like full steam ahead. So my son, for example, is a little entrepreneur, and he's seen me since the get-go, like sit down and work with Canva. So he learned Canva too, like the fun,
the graphic design program. Yep.
Yeah. And he sees me like trying to make money in new ways. So like, that's what he does too. Like he has this whole candy business at school where and like gibbets, where he buys gibbets or candy, like wholesale, and upsells it at school and comes home every day with like $5-10. Like, so
nice.
Seeing, and like at my book launch party, I had books, for my friends, family, everyone to buy. And I put him in charge. I'm like, Grayson, here's the books. Here is like the card reader. Here's my Venmo. Here's a cash box. And he took care of the whole thing beautifully.
Amazing.
So the fact that like I was able to teach him these things, and I trusted him the most, honestly, to deal with the technology, the neat things I've been able to teach him, to see him like grow with. That's really cool. My daughter is more in terms of seeing her face light up or seeing where she is coming into her own. Like, for example, she made me these earrings this morning. So she also started a business, and she's selling stuff. And so I bought these earrings. I decided to wear them today. And the look on her face was, I put them on, and she saw me and she said, oh my gosh, mommy's actually wearing the earrings I made her. And she looked so proud, like just so proud. And so today, my sparkle moment with her, if I had to write it down, would just be the look on Ava's face when she saw me wear these earrings. It just made her feel, that's really all kids want, like us too, with our parents. Yep. We just, someone to be proud of us. And so that was cool. And like, again, at the book launch party, she kept stealing my mic from me, but everything she said was on point, and everything she's getting amazing public speaking skills. So there's like 50 people at the party, and she stole the mic and said, I just need you all to know, nobody is perfect. We are not Barbie. Like, so I'd say that's the sparkle, seeing them each really come into their personalities and allow them to be their personalities.
Yeah.
The hard is seeing them each really in their personalities and like in their personalities. And I'll say like, we're dealing right now with stuff comes more easily for both of them, for one than the other. Right. Mm-hmm. So then it's hard to be really proud of one kid, and then the other one then feels like, well, I'm a piece of dirt because I don't have this. And then you must not be proud of me too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'd say the hardest part, just kind of thinking on my feet here, is I think all of us want to do for our kids what wasn't done for us.
Yeah.
And so we work our butts off to make sure our kids have all the things that we didn't. Like, so for me, that looks like there's usually a parent at home when they get off the bus, more often than not, and I am there and I am present. Mm-hmm. I ask them about their day. Dinner conversation revolves around them. Any activity they want to do, I will figure it out. I am the house where the kids come. I don't care if kids are loud. I don't care if they mess up the kitchen. I have all the sleepovers. Like, and we are so generous with vacations and things and stuff. And like, we have given and given and given and given everything to them. And I think we're doing a pretty fabulous job. And then to be told, that you're a bad mom. I'm going to sue you. That's my favorite. I'm going to sue you because you didn't let us have whatever. And I'm like, go for it. I'm going to talk to the school psychologist and I'm going to sue you. I'm like, okay.
Okay.
Like, sure.
That is the child of a lawyer, if there ever was one.
It is.
Yeah.
We are doing a good job, like Alicia Keys says, and we are working so hard for when our kids think it's still not enough. It's like, are you freaking kidding me? And I say, and I probably isn't the best thing to say, but like, if you only knew, like how much you're getting that we never in a million years got.
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me right now? So I think that's the entitlement is hard.
Yeah.
I don't feel bad saying this because I say it to my children too. That's the hard part. When we give, do, we know it's enough. And we have finally done the coaching and this personal development work to know it's enough. And our kids are like, it's not enough.
Yeah.
And like what self-limiting that, and then seeing the other hard part is now that we have a word for imposter syndrome and we have a word or a phrase for self-limiting beliefs, and we see those self-limiting beliefs start to develop in our children's minds. Maybe it has nothing to do with us. It just has something to do with like a friend or at the playground or whatever.
Right.
And there's nothing we can do really to like stop it. Even if we say this is a self-limiting belief, like this isn't actually true. This is all these things. We can't rescue them from it. Right?
Oh my God. I think that is one of the hardest parts of parenting, is so desperately wanting to rescue our kids from stuff that we've dealt with our whole lives, right? That imposter syndrome, self-limiting beliefs, the negative, reflecting on ourselves in a negative way. Then, as I was telling you, my older daughter's 14. She's in her first year of high school. And there are a lot of things that come along with that, and a lot of places where she feels not good enough. And that is so hard to see and to not be able to rescue her from, because, and I can't, as you said, we can't, like, she's going to have to figure that out herself, but man, it sucks.
You know what else I wasn't anticipating was reliving, like stuff I thought I put to bed, like stuff I did the work on. I grieved. I got better. I could put it in a box and put it on the shelf. Like, oh, it doesn't matter if this friend was mean to me back then, because who cares? But then watching your kid go through it, you're like, oh gosh, it puts you right back there too. And it's hard. I found it's hard to differ. I'm learning. It's hard to differentiate my feelings from my kids' feelings.
Yes. Yeah.
And
for
sure. Actually more upset, like me or them,
And for sure, and this is something, I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Shefali Sabari, but she talks about this idea of needing to reparent ourselves as we are parenting our children, because it brings up a lot of feelings for us. I want to dig into a couple more of the nuggets that you have in the book, just that are so valuable for some of us who are the working parents, right? And not everybody is. And frankly, I got to say, shout out to the stay-at-home parents, because I think that's harder, right? Like
100% agree.
The days that I am home, I was solo parenting over this last weekend, and I was like, oh my God, I love my children. And when is this going to be over? This is hard. It's hard. Everything doesn't function the same as it does, in the professional world. And so shout out to those folks. But I guess this really applies to stay-at-home parents and working parents. Like, what sort of nuggets? I know you offer some in the book. Do you talk about in terms of like mornings and before you go to bed? There's some good stuff about that.
Yeah. Top number one thing that if people don't get anything out of my book or presentation or anything, I always say this, is you have to wake up before your children. If your children wake up before you or they're getting you out of bed, like you have started the day behind, period. Like period, end of story, done. Like I firmly believe that. And people get really nervous about that. Some of my people who aren't like morning people, I'm like, I don't even care if you are just waking up to have a cup of coffee on the couch in silence. You don't have to do anything, but you have got to get your brain in your head before someone is bothering you or bugging you or asking you for something, because that's what it's going to be all day. Like we know as a parent, from the moment your child wakes up until the moment they go to bed. And lately I go to bed right after my kids go to bed as I'm exhausted. Someone is asking something of you all day. Yep. So it's your only half an hour or however long you can have. I say your brain's in your head and it's for you. So number one, that. Number two is your morning routine actually begins the evening before. And I know most of us fall into this trap where the day has been hard. And I'm not saying I'm immune from this trap. This trap
Right.
still gets me too. Like, right. Even last week, the trap gets me too. I just have to recognize it and say, okay, this isn't working.
Yeah.
We're so exhausted by the end of the day. We're like, what will solve it is a glass of wine, Netflix, and chilling out on the couch. Like that will solve all my problems.
Yes.
And while I think it's 100% necessary to do that, like every now and then, like it's when it creeps up and it's day after day after day. And that's how we're always getting our me time. We're like, oh, my me time's at night. I don't actually need it in the morning, Wendy, because I have this. Like, no, that doesn't count. When I say that me time, it is like good for you me time. It's either like doing nothing with your coffee, which is sort of like meditation in a way, right? Meditation, working out, reading something good, but you need to begin your day that way, and it starts the night before. Other things for morning, I think those are my two biggies really for morning and nighttime.
Yeah. I love that. You said something earlier when you were talking about your earrings that you're wearing that your daughter made for you, which match your outfit perfectly, by the way. And you said, I had to write that moment of sparkle down. Mm-hmm. So do you keep track of like during your morning routine when you're having your cup of coffee or at some other time, do you track those moments of sparkle?
I do. So I'm not trying to like shamelessly plug myself, but like I firmly believe in journaling, and I think journaling should happen every morning. And I'm actually finishing my journal finally. The journal actually came before in the book. I should have actually said that too. I had the journal written and done before the book, and I couldn't figure out what to call the damn journal. I'm like, what do I call this? And I was going around and around, and I'm like, Wendy, and it's the Sparkle and Grit journal. I'm like, okay. And I finally had that epiphany a year ago. And then I was like, well, I have to write the Sparkle and Grit book first. So it makes sense. Like the book needs to come before the journal. So my journal will finally be out like next month. But so one of the pieces of the journal is, the 3 pieces of gratitude. And the journal is based on the premises of Sparkle and Grit, right? So gratitude could be like the sparkle as well. And I like journaling in a way, knowing I am crap at night. I am toast. I am not going to look at a journal at the end of the day, like some of them tell you to do, to like catalog it then. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So what I really enjoy in my journaling process now is I'm in the morning and I think about what were the 3 most amazing things about yesterday. And the neat thing is then, because usually we go by life so fast and fast and fast, we're never reflecting on the day before. So I like to reflect on the day before and say, okay, what was the amazing thing that happened? What went great? I journal the 3 things that went great yesterday. So if it was tomorrow morning, I would say the look and smile in Ava's eyes when she saw me wear the earrings. Like that would definitely, I think, be top. And when I think of it again and smile again, like that becomes one of those core memories, like we have like an inside out or something like that we can hold on to. I also
love
talk
that
about
idea.
Yeah. I talk about, and where could I done better? And there's a prompt, where could I have done better in work, family, self, or me, or health or something? And it could be, maybe I shouldn't have had that wine before Netflix, or I was a yelling mommy in the morning because my kids weren't out the door in time. And as much as I want to blame them, it's really on me because I got lost in Instagram instead of like said, hey kids, brush your teeth, get your socks on, whatever.
Right.
So journaling in that way and finding the sparkle in that way is really, gratitude, like a gratitude practice, like you've probably seen in all the other books.
Yep. Oh, I love that idea. It's funny. I try to remember those little moments, and I'm sure there are parents listening to this who are like, oh yeah, I try so hard to remember them. And then they kind of dissolve without us intending it. Of course, we forget things. And there are times when my husband will remind me of, do you remember when Macy did whatever, or Marin said this? And I'm like, oh my God, now I feel like a terrible parent because I don't remember that at all. And I'm thinking of this moment of sparkle from this last weekend when as I said, I was solo parenting, and my younger daughter, who's 6, was sitting on the couch and she was reading a book or something. And I was sitting in a chair across from her, also reading, and I dozed off because I was tired. And all of a sudden I felt her little hands on me, and she was covering me with a blanket and said, oh, Mama, you look cold. And it was like the sweetest moment. And I want to, as you described, like the memory balls from inside out, like I want to save that. And so I love this idea of using some of that morning time to kind of write down those sparkle moments or the gratitude moments. And we know the research is really clear that gratitude changes the brain and the body. There's, research on the physical impacts, positive physical impacts on the body. I can hear parents saying, oh my God, you want me to get up earlier to do this?
I know.
Which sort of plays into that overall idea that a lot of us struggle with, whether we're stay-at-home parents or working parents, which is balance.
Yep.
Talk to us a little bit about balance and how you address that in the work that you do and in the Sparkle and Grit book.
So a couple pieces to say. Number one, I know people want to fight me so badly on having to wake up earlier and do more. But the really funny thing that happens is when you wake up earlier and do one of the things I talk about in the book, you actually are going to feel more energetic and get more done and accomplished. And you actually, life will feel less in the good ways. It'll feel more in the ways you want it to feel more, and it will feel less stressful in the ways it needs to feel less stressful because you're taking out this time for yourself and like you have the time for your brain to actually rest while you're awake. Mm-hmm. So I know parents fight me on it. Like you just got to try it. You just got to try it and believe me. And I promise it will feel better. Because think about it. I can remember back 2015 when everything was awful and I was sleeping until 7:30 and my kids were waking me up and I slept to the last possible second. And then it was like rush. And I was never more exhausted. Yeah. And then now, like with this book coming out and every morning, like I've added something like that I need to do in terms of getting the book more in production and the journal and all these things. So much energy because I'm just excited and I'm happy and I'm like excited to wake up to get to have my coffee and meditate and journal. So it's, you play with your brain that way. So like, it feels like less time you have or less sleep, but it actually leads to more energy. Yeah. In terms of balance, I like to use the flamingo as my mascot because she's in a perpetual state of balance. But balance, like what I talk about in the book, it's not like we finally craft the perfect time blocking and morning routine and all these things. And we've reached this pinnacle and we have work-life balance and we get that forever and ever and ever. Like, right.
It'd be lovely if that could happen, but yeah.
But I think it's just really being present to each day and knowing what balance looks like in that day. Like, what does balance look like today? Like, okay, so today it might be, I have 20 million work meetings. And when I'm at work, I'm going to be super present at work, but like the time is done at 4 and then I can be a super present parent when I am home with my kids. And like, that's balance. Or it might be, like I said, you are a litigator, right? Like, and they're in a 5-day trial and they barely see their kids, but they are at work and that is 100% where they need to be that day. And then that weekend, when they finally get some time to rest and be with their kids, then they're 100% present with their kids. So I think balance is ever changing. I know people like to also refer to it as harmony. And I think I talk about that in the book, definitely the journal, which is balance doesn't mean everything is equal. It's not like I'm equal parenting, equal, right, doing home stuff, equal, like working. It's just more what works in that particular day. So that's how I address it. And I address it like once we do all these things, balance is going to come more naturally, but we have to go easy on ourselves too. Like sometimes life really is just hard. And if we think we're really going to reach this place where everything is easy peasy and it's just going to go off without a hitch all the time, like it's an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah, we're kind of setting ourselves up for failure and disappointment when we do that. What struck me as you described that balance, and I love the visual of the flamingo, in part because flamingos happen to be my youngest child's favorite animal. But also just this idea that it's really balance over time. Some days maybe all work and some days maybe all kids. But if there's this sort of over time balance, that's kind of a broader way to think about it, or harmony, as you said. Oh my gosh, Wendy, there's so many good nuggets in the book. And as you said, you call them grit work. There's these lovely sort of questions that you invite people into that allow them to life coach themselves. It's really lovely. So I know that we could continue this conversation for much longer, but since we don't have time to do that, I'd love to sort of give you the opportunity to, like, where can people find you if they want more? What's the best place to get the book? What's the best place to connect with you?
Best place to get the book right now is on Amazon. So Sparkle and Grit, it's available in the paperback and Kindle version. I recommend the paperback. Like it's a pretty book, and it's like, it's a nice thing to have. And for me, when I read books, I do like to mark them up and underline and highlight and all those things.
Yeah. So when, as I told you, like I ordered the Kindle version first. And then as I dug into it, I was like, oh, no, I need the book. So that is arriving at my house on.
You're not the only one.
Friday.
I've heard that. Yeah. I've heard that from a couple of different people. And thank you very much. Yeah. So I'd say the book on Amazon. And then in terms of getting in touch with me or following me, I think I'm most present on LinkedIn and Instagram, or Sparkle on Grit on Instagram, and then Wendy S Meadows on LinkedIn. Yeah. So I need the S in there. And my website as well. As of right now, I'm pretty easily findable, right? And I reply.
Perfect.
And it's actually, it's not like some pretend person on the other side of my social media, like replying for me.
Right.
So
we will make sure that all of those links are in the show notes so that people can find you, as well as the book, because it really is fabulous. And, I've read a lot of sort of the self-help kind of genre of books, or the, how do we make our lives better books. And this one, I feel like, has really concrete, actionable things for folks to do as they read it. It's also just so relatable. And as you said, like that one big takeaway and a reminder, and really one of the goals of this podcast as well, is that we all remember that, like, we're not the only ones and we're not alone in this.
Well, thank you. Your words, like in the beginning of the podcast and now, they just make me feel like all gooey and warm inside. So it's really cool when people have read it's bananas, but it's like really cool when people read my book and they get out of it exactly what I want them to get out of it, which is like this sparkle, and they feel heard, and like they kind of like it, and it's like a good storytelling. I'm hopeful. And then I wanted it to be concrete and not bullcrap. Like I wanted to give people actual action steps that they could take. So the fact that you see that and saw that, and especially as someone like yourself that's like in this similar industry and doing these things, that just really means a lot. So thank you.
Well, it's fantastic. Wendy, thank you so much for obviously being on the podcast, but in a broader sense, sharing your wisdom and your journey and your experience with the world. Because I think you're right. You were put here to support women, and you're doing a fabulous job at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me, everyone, on today's podcast. I hope you got a nugget of goodness, if not more than one, out of that conversation with Wendy Meadows. I'm so grateful to her for joining us. If you would like to find out more about what Wendy does and where you can find her at wendysmeadows.com. You can also get a copy of her book on Amazon, and I will put a link for that in the show notes. In other news, if you are feeling like you do need additional support, I want to remind you that the Heartful Parent Academy, hosted by yours truly, is always an option for really phenomenal parenting and partnering support. There is tons of great content in there. There are 13 pre-recorded modules, and I also support members live 3 times a month. So lots of great options for really high quality parenting content. The Heartful Parent Academy is one of the only officially licensed products by the Positive Discipline Association in the United States. I think I'm one of 4, and I'm so proud of what's in there, and the members who have made their way through the content have just loved it. We talk about self-care, we talk about partner care, we talk about parenting, we talk about safety. You know, my focus is always about keeping kids' brain and body safe, and all of that goodness is inside the Academy. If you would like to give it a try and just check it out for a month, use the code podcast at checkout, and you will get your first month for only $7. You can find it in the show notes or by going to my website at theheartfulparent.com and clicking on the Heartful Parent Academy. I hope to see you there, and I hope to see you next week again on the Heartful Parent Podcast. See you soon.